Rise Up and Run. Stories of deliverance and transformation through the power of Jesus Christ that allows people to rise up from bondage and run in freedom. I'm your host, Janice. Hi friends, this is Janice Hewitt, and I am welcoming you back to another episode of Rise Up and Run. I'm so grateful for you joining us today. I want to welcome my guest this afternoon. His name is Robby Decker, and he has an incredible redemption story about how he got off drugs. I can't wait to hear it. I don't know the story very well, so we'll be learning it together for the first time. Welcome, Robby.
Hi everybody, I'm Robby Decker, and I'm here to share my story.
Where do you want to start?
Let's start at 4 years old. I lost a sister, and that's kind of where my whole story with God started. So that's where we'll start.
When you were 4, I mean, that's young. Can you even understand the concept of God and death? Did you believe in God prior to that? What are your memories there?
No, not really. I mean, I was too young, I think, really, but I had heard the God word and everything. And then when we had to bury my sister, it was like, there's no way that God would ever do that to a family, to bury a 7-year-old girl. I mean, how could he possibly do it? So I turned against him then and just kind of lived my life without him.
Can I ask how she died, or is that too...
She had a congenital heart disease.
Oh, man.
So, yep. And all the way through our life, my mom had to take care of her back and forth to Iowa City and everything else all the time with her. She had, I think, 3 open heart surgeries.
Oh.
And then a lot of different doctors and all that. My mom was busy all the time with her.
Right. And so then you probably, just because of logistics, didn't get as much attention as you might have liked from your parents or your mom, for sure. Is that true, would you say?
Yeah. And then as we got older, we started realizing that my dad had an alcohol problem. So he worked and then he drank, and that's how he coped with all the pain of losing his daughter.
I can't imagine what that would be like.
So it was a lot of just me and my sister. I had one older sister, and we kind of just grew upon each other. And then we got really, really tight with my grandparents. They lived right down the street from us, and they became like our mom and dad. I mean, like our second mom and dad.
So your mom is Jody.
Yep.
And Bobby? Is that your dad?
Yep.
Robby lives in this area of town. Like I call it a little commune, because like the whole family lives in about 3 or 4 houses apart.
Yeah, we call it Deckerville.
Deckerville. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Was it your dad's parents?
Yep, my dad's parents.
So they lived there too. And are they still alive?
No, they're both passed away.
Okay.
That'll come up in my story here in a minute.
Oh, okay. I'm jumping the gun. So go ahead. What else?
So as that went on, my grandma started doing a lot with my mom for my sister that had the heart defect. And then after she passed away, then it was my mom went through really bad depression and grief and everything else, and kind of did her own thing, but did take care of us. I mean, she was there for us the best she could be.
Sure.
And we was too young to really realize what was going on. So I spent a lot of time with my grandma and grandpa. A lot of time.
So you said your dad turned to alcohol to help cope. Did mom turn to drugs or alcohol?
No, never touched a drug, alcohol, cigarettes. She's never done nothing.
She just struggled in her own way.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Sure. So then continue.
And then I guess I was always kind of a loner all the way through school and everything. Just did my own thing and hung out with my grandpa all the time. I mean, all the time. I mean, we was like, if you seen him, you seen me. Mm-hmm. Seen me, you seen him. I'd go to his work. I'd hang out with him on second shift. I mean, I was with him all the time. And then as I got older, that relationship just kept growing and growing. I got so tight with my grandma and grandpa that's where my whole story turned. My grandpa had passed away, and that was like the end of my world. I mean, I lost my best friend, I lost my grandpa, I lost everything.
How old was your grandpa? Was it sudden?
He was, he had a massive heart attack actually in the back of his truck right after we ate lunch.
Oh, no. Were you there?
Yep. Well, I was right around the corner at my great-grandma's, mowing her yard. My sister was mowing my grandpa's yard. And my sister come running up the hill, screaming at me to come down there. I went down there, and we seen him laying in the back of his truck, passed away. So that really hit me hard. And I was 13 or 14, I can't remember. And that's where all the bad stuff come in.
Okay, that was the trigger for all that.
Yeah.
So before then, you weren't involved with drugs or alcohol or anything like that?
Nope, I was a good kid, never in trouble.
How was your belief in God? Was that still absent?
Completely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So then I really I didn't really turn against God then. I still hadn't accepted him. So it went completely on Robby's will. I mean, that's where it took off. And then in high school, I started running with the wrong group of people. I mean, they showed me the attention that I was craving. So then that's where the drugs and alcohol and everything kicked in. I mean, I felt accepted. So I was like, okay, here's the true friends. Here's who I want to be with.
Was your relationship with your dad existent, or was he too involved to parent you well?
No. Me and my dad's always tight. I mean, we always had a relationship. He got sober in the late 80s.
Okay.
Early 90s, somewhere in there. So he's been sober a long time and still is today.
Great.
And then let's see.
So you're in high school. You're doing Robby's will.
High school, yes. High school, Robby's will, everything. I met a girl, and
that's trouble right there.
Oh yeah. First real girlfriend in my sophomore year. It was her freshman year, and we got together, and then we moved in together. I don't remember when it was, probably senior year or whatever. And she got pregnant. So we had a boy named Elijah, and I went to treatment. After that.
Because what were you using at that time? Were you drugs and alcohol?
Yeah.
And your drug of choice?
Whatever made me feel good.
Okay, so meth.
Yeah, everything. Weed.
Okay.
Meth. I mean, cocaine, whatever.
And did you say alcohol too?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Anything that altered my mind. I mean, I wanted it.
Were you blocking out the pain then from the loss of your sister and your grandpa?
Yeah, definitely.
Did you have anyone to talk to or tried to walk you through that grief?
No, I mean, I had a lot of people that wanted to, but I didn't want to talk to nobody.
It's hard to bring all that stuff back up again and to process it out loud.
Yeah, and it was a lot easier and a lot funner to just mask it. And
was it fun though?
I can't lie, I had good times. Yeah. But when I sit down and think about it, no, it wasn't fun. Today I look at it as like all that was not fun. I mean,
but then I think too, you cover it up until you wake up the next morning, or it's just a constant grief is just hold on to every part of you. And even if you are able to forget about it for a few hours or whatever, there it is again when you sober up.
That grief is just horrible. It's a horrible, horrible journey.
Yeah.
But, and then we had our boy. I went to treatment. That was successful. I stayed clean and sober for 15 years.
Wow. How old were you then?
22.
So you had a boy at 22, and that was Elijah. Okay.
Yeah.
Went to treatment, sober for 15 years.
Yes. Yeah.
And then?
Me still, no God, no nothing in my life. I mean, it was still Robby's will. And then the most traumatic thing in my life happened. I mean, I think in any parent's life, what the most worst thing that could ever happen was I seen my son 6 hours before I went back to work the next day, and at 8 o'clock that morning, the Waterloo PD showed up and asked me to come up front and outside. And they said they had the worst news that you could ever get. They had found my son passed away in his sleep of a massive heart attack. So there was probably the biggest life changer for me.
And how old was he?
He was 20 years old.
And that's just, you can't even imagine that. 20 and a heart attack? How does that even go together? It just doesn't make sense.
No, that's what we thought too.
Did you have any kind of did he have that heart problem too?
No. We had him at the heart doctor 3 different times, and all 3 times he checked out fine. And he didn't live the perfect life, that's for sure. I mean, he did his things.
Sure.
So, I mean, we know that it influenced what happened.
Yeah, so drugs then too for him, and the effects that can have on your health.
Yeah, he was into that synthetic marijuana, that K2 or whatever.
Ooh, that's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So
I am so sorry, Robby.
we know that that's what influenced the heart attack. I mean, but when they did the autopsy, it come back completely clean. So they couldn't, even the autopsy people can't detect that K2. So.
And what did that do to you?
That took me down a very, very dark valley. I mean, it was horrible.
So you were clean up until he died?
Yes, I was drinking a little bit, but other than that, yep, I was totally clean. And went into a really, really deep depression. A lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. Locked myself in my house. Took a lot of time off work. And then I went back to work, and then shortly after that, I come out of the depression. Not really out of it, but enough where I could get out of the house.
How long ago was this that Elijah died?
It'll be 3 years.
Oh, so
this
it's
August.
just so recent.
Yeah. So being as I was already drinking a little bit, I mean, wasn't doing no drugs yet. I was hanging out in bars, doing the fun thing, being single, party life again. And like I said, I had the 15 years clean. And it was like how fast, just that one thought in my head. And it was like just instant. I mean, it was like I picked the person out of the crowd and it was game on. I mean, that fast.
You picked a person out of the crowd
that had
drugs?
Yeah.
Okay.
After 15 years, I mean, I didn't know nobody in that game, and it was just that quick.
And what were you thinking? Were you just thinking, I don't even care?
No, I didn't even care. No. Live or die.
What else could go wrong? What worse could happen to me than what has already?
Yeah. I mean, basically, I was on destroying my life. I mean, I was going to die. That's where the direction I was heading. I knew I was, and I didn't care. I mean, I didn't have God. I always had my family, but it was like, I had them, but I didn't have them. I was in my own world. I didn't care about nobody.
You have a tight family.
Oh, really tight.
Close and neat. Your family is a very neat group of people. So I'm sure they were concerned about you and grieving too, because they also lost a grandson, a nephew. And then just watching what it was doing to you must have been horrible to watch.
Yeah, I mean.
So how long did it take you then to get back into full-blown addiction?
Matter of a month, I'd say, maybe. I mean, like they say, the progression it just never stops. I mean, it's continuously always growing. Mm-hmm. And right where you left off, you pick back up. It's definitely true. I mean,
you do. Did it hard and heavy?
Oh, yeah. And then I did that for, I don't know, not very long, really. And only thing I had left in my life was my job.
Because you've had the same job for decades, right?
Yes. I've been at my job for fully for 21 years. I've been at the street department for 14 years.
So Robby's the guy that when me and you were sleeping and it's snowing like crazy, Robby's the guy out there plowing the snow for us. Thank you, Robby.
Yeah.
If nobody else says thank you, I'm doing it now. And so you were like a functioning addict. Did it affect your job at all? I mean, probably did, but as far as like people knowing?
No. I mean, it did. I mean, because I knew I wasn't giving my all.
Well, you couldn't.
So, I mean, it affected me.
Yeah.
Like mentally, but physically, yeah, I still did my job.
Yeah.
But, and then I had a random UA come up.
Were you on probation?
No.
Oh, at work.
At work.
Okay. I was going to say, that's kind of my
Yep.
bag of tricks there, that probation stuff.
No, at work.
Okay.
Same thing.
I didn't know that they did random UAs. Yeah.
So they did a random UA on me, and I knew it was going to be dirty. And when they come back, I had to go in front of my bosses, kind of admit that, there wasn't no reason to lie about it. I mean, they had me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, what are we going to do? And I, with the CDO, you have to go through, it's a program through DOT because they're involved with a CDO. And I talked to, they call it a SAP provider. And I talked to him and he had to give me his recommendations. And I did that. And he recommended me to do 20 counseling sessions.
Okay.
Never did a counselor in my life. Didn't trust him. I mean, it's like, it was always Robby's will. So.
Were you kind of a grumpy dude before you knew Christ? I don't know if you were or not, but you seem like you could be.
I don't really know if I was grumpy, but I mean, I've always been an uptight person.
Okay.
I ain't gonna lie.
Nope.
So.
Nothing wrong with that.
And then that's where my story, that's all the negative in my story. So then it started positive. I mean, I got caught and I was like, I got clean instantly right away. I quit using on my own. I mean, I was sick and tired already and now my job's in jeopardy. So I was like, that's it. That's enough of that. And I ain't touched it since then.
I want to go to the counseling. Did you do the 20 counseling sessions?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Were you able to walk through some of that grief then? Or did you put your heart and soul into that counseling or did you just show
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I didn't like so much of it being on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was they set me up with a really good lady in Georgia.
Oh.
And it was all done through Zoom. I mean, me with my trust issues, I was like, somebody could be tapping in on this internet. And I was like, I don't like it, but I'm going to put it all into it. Something's got to change. And that's where me and her cracked into the grief. And it was like, wow, that's been my problem this whole time. I mean, I've totally destroyed my life over grief of just not opening up to somebody and pouring it out. So I did them 20 sessions, got back to work. Everything's going great at work, still up to today. I mean, I really enjoy my job. I love what I do. Not too many people say that, but I do. And then Christmas Eve, two Christmases ago now.
So it'd be Christmas of 2021.
2022, no? Yeah.
Because last Christmas was 2023.
It was the one at the convention center. The last one at the convention center.
Oh, that would be, I don't know. We'll figure this out. Yeah. We'll get back to you on that.
But anyhow, that's where I guess my nephew, which is the pastor at Hope City, Drew, he told me one night at my mom and dad's, he says, Rob, you're sitting here and you're like a lump on a log. I mean, you don't want to do nothing. He says, why don't you give God a chance? He said, what do you got to lose? He says, you have nothing. So I was like, what do you got to lose? Mm-hmm. And I told him, you're crazy. I'm not doing all that. But then I sat and I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought about it. And it was like, really, he's got a point. What do I got to lose? So Christmas Eve, I went to the service at the convention center, whatever year it was. And I sat there totally uncomfortable. And there was like 1,000 people there.
Did you think these folks are freaky?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I'll throw in a little bit more about a little bit of the negative. I always kind of judged by skin color. So, now that I know Q's going to listen to this, so he already knows. We already talked about it, And then Christmas Eve, it was like, I was sitting there, I was with my sister and her husband and my niece, and he started giving the message, and it was like he was talking right to me.
Isn't that something? And so many people could say the same thing for that night, because it's just how the Holy Spirit works, how God works.
Yeah, it was like he was talking right to me, and I asked Drew like 3 times. I said, "Dude, did you tell him? Did you tell him what's going on?" He says, "No, I didn't," but he kind of had an idea. And it was like, okay, so I was sitting there, and he gave the whole message and everything, and then he come to the end of the message, and it was like he come to the point of lighting the candle. And it was like he put eye contact right on me, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. And it was like he just looked around, then his eyes come back to me, then looked around, his eyes come back to me, and it was like, all you have to do, if you want to come out of whatever you're in, all you have to do is light that candle and accept God in your life and see what happens. And it was like, I thought to myself, I was like, it's that simple. And he was like, I just thought, and I thought, and I sat there and I watched my sister, I watched my brother-in-law, my niece, everybody light the candle, everybody lit the candle in the whole room. And here I am, I'm sitting there, I'm still hesitant. I didn't do it right away, still hesitant. And I lit the candle. And it was like just an instant wave of, I guess the Holy Spirit went right through me.
Yes, he does.
From my head to my toe.
Ooh,
it was like just
a tingle, a
complete tingle all the way through my whole body. Ooh. And I was like, when I felt that, I was like, something just changed in me.
something serious just happened.
Yeah. It was like, so maybe God really is real. Something just happened in my body that I have no clue what it was.
Do you know what happens in heaven when a sinner repents? The angels sing. The angels were singing that day, Robby. Oh, so your nephew, Drew, so he became pastor at Hope City. Now he's the campus pastor in Waterloo.
Yeah.
How many years ago was that? Was that like 3 years ago or so?
Yeah, probably.
At that point, was anyone in your family going to church?
My mom she's always been a believer.
Has she been going to Hope City though?
No.
Because now the pews are full of Deckers, aren't they?
And Dolans.
And Dolans. Yep. Yeah, because your mom, your dad, he doesn't come though, does he?
But my dad watches it faithfully every week on the TV.
And your sister and her husband?
No, not her husband, but my sister and Brienne. Ryan.
Yeah.
And Brienne. And I got another nephew, the youngest one out of the 3 boys. He's getting out of prison here in a couple weeks.
Okay, good.
And he called me on Easter, actually, and he broke down and cried. And he said, I hear how much you're doing, how much you're involved in church, and, what changed that, what happened. And I explained to him, and he broke down in tears. And I believe I have him talked into coming to Rise Up. Good. Rise Up is that group we have on Sunday evenings at our church with men that are transitioning out of prison or just trying to do better, right? So he's going to come to that. Yes. Yep. He says he is. I hope it's not prison talk, but he says he is. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. He needs to come at least try for 3 times, and then if he's going to love it. Yep. People love it there. Yep. So do you remember anything that our Q is our pastor, that Q said during that service that just kind of got you, or maybe you don't recall? It was lighting that candle. he says, if you want to come out of the darkness, all you have to do is light that candle. It was like he wanted to look right at me and say, Robby, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you idiot, that's all you have to do.
He wouldn't call you an idiot.
Well, I'm just saying.
Not to your face anyway. Right?
It was like, how can it be just that simple? I mean,
and it is so simple, isn't it?
I fought it for 45 years. It's like, how can it be that simple to just bring God into my life?
And don't you think, or do you think that being able to work through that grief kind of paved the way, or at least opened that door of possibly allowing God in?
I think that's where the seed was planted.
How did your therapist tackle that grief? Like, how did she work you out of that?
I'd have to say she was really patient with me, and actually, she was kind of slick about it. I mean, you could tell it's her profession, and she kind of worked around it. And because she said, I can tell that you're a locked up person, you're not much of a sharer. And like, I told her, serious trust issues. And it was like, but she's like, oh, I'm gonna break through. I'm gonna get through that wall. One brick. That's all it's going to take. And then she says, I'll have you sharing a little bit. And it took probably about half. I had to do 20 sessions, and it took probably 10 of them. And it was like, I just gave up. And it was like, but that was all before even God. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was still on Robby's will. I hadn't accepted God in my life yet.
And didn't it feel good? I'm just trying to encourage people that have grief. Grief, sadness is what they call a secondary emotion, or anger is a secondary emotion. So a lot of times grief comes out as being angry. Grief or hurt or anything like that will show up as being angry, or in your case, addiction. And so it's so important for people that are stuck in a horrible situation of grief to get that help that they need. So I'm glad that you were able to do that. And do you feel much freer now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, after that Holy Spirit went through me Christmas Eve, I mean, nothing's been the same since.
So what happened? Like the next day, did you wake up and go like, oh my gosh, the grass is greener?
That was Christmas Day. So it was like, I was with my family, everything I did good. And I'm not much of a crier, but I mean, when I'm alone, I'm sad. I mean, I'm always sad. Well, I was always sad, but it was like, it was just this past year, we had Christmas with my sister and her family, Drew and all my nephews and nieces and all that. And Elijah's boy, my grandson, didn't get to come. And I was mad. I mean, I wasn't mad. I was hurt. Well, I was mad, but I was hurt and everything, because that's all I have of Elijah now is his boy. And his mom denied him to come with us. And I went over to Drew's for Christmas with them. And I just broke down. I mean, I started crying and I felt bad because I wrecked everybody's Christmas. And it was like, but I was alone. I didn't have no way, I don't have a wife. I don't have no other. Well, I have another daughter. I have a 21-year-old daughter, which is a really rocky relationship, which I know it can be rebuilt, but it's real rocky right now. So I was there alone. That's the gist of the story. I was there alone. And when it came time to do gifts, I seen my sister enjoying her family and my mom and dad. And my mom looked at me, I looked at her, and I just melted. I mean, I broke down. That's the first real breakdown since he died.
And that's okay. I had. That's good to feel that.
Yeah, yep.
And I'm sure your family understood.
Oh yeah, they did. They all told me, what do you mean you're alone? It's like, you ain't alone. You got us. I was like, but it's just, I don't know, just a different feeling. But, and I got through that, and I think that big cry it really changed my outlook on everything. I mean, it's like, okay, now I got God. Now, everything's looking good for me. Everything's stepping up. I really got involved in church.
You really did. Robby, like if there's a email or something on Facebook saying, hey, who can help? Robby's there. He goes, this is my family. This is what family does. He is wonderful. He is on the security team at church. He comes to our Rise Up groups. He started his own ministry for the homeless, you guys. I mean, he probably never would have thought of doing any of that when he was saturated in his grief. So he is a trophy of God's grace. I heard that saying once. And for him to be able to come out of addiction and an act of hatred towards God to where he is now, it's two different people.
Yeah,
he is a victory story.
Definitely. And and it all come with how they say, everybody has a purpose and everything happens for a purpose. And it was like, I got so mad at Q every time he would say, Robby, there's a purpose in what happened. And, you don't believe it right now because you're sad, you're angry, you're mad, but some way or another, something's going to happen. And it's going to be, God showing you I don't really want to say that why he took my kid, but how I'm going to use the pain of losing Lige to benefit another person.
Absolutely.
And that's when I was like, that's when I got really serious insecurity. It was like, God protected me all these years. So why wouldn't I want to protect his people? So that's why I got big insecurity at church. And then the homeless ministry, the You Matter homeless ministry, when I'm busy with the You Matter homeless ministry, that means that there's a lot of people that are broken that I'm finding and they need help. But it's like, I was never homeless, but I was that broken person that never had God. And it's like, that's where I want to be. I want to be like right in the midst of the brokenness of the broken.
Oh, I love that.
And I want to bring, just speak Jesus to them. I might not even get them back to church, but just to bring them a little bit of Jesus and
I feel
maybe plant that seed.
Yeah. And I feel like the homeless, if people generally, if they see a homeless person walking down the street, they'll cross the street. They're like lepers to some people,
Yeah, definitely.
I know when we were in Los Angeles doing a missions trip last summer, I made sure that I approached the scariest looking people. And I remember this one guy I talked to, he was big and tall and he just had his hood pulled down and he picked his head up and his face just beamed that somebody would talk to him, that he wasn't scary, that he wasn't undesirable or a degenerate that nobody wanted anything to do. So I just commend you for that. You have been sober 18 months now?
Yep, 18 months. Yep.
Your story is going to be relatable to so many people. I would love to get my podcast in the prisons. I would love that.
Definitely.
Because so many guys are just... So I was a probation officer for 100 years, so I kind of know a little bit about what I'm talking about here. But they come out and just think there's nothing else to do. I'm only going to go back to what I know because that's all that I know. And so when you are able to share your testimony, and Robby is not like a chatty dude, so for him to come here and tell his story is not something that, he was very willing to do it, but he probably would be ready to do something else right about now. So I appreciate that. And, someone was saying, talking about her addiction, and she's clean now, but how she was so ashamed of it. And I said, Satan loves shame because it keeps us from talking about what God did. So it's not just our story, it's God's story about what he can do and the power that he has. And so anybody that's a mess, whether you're an addict, whether you're drowning in grief, whether you're a rager like I used to be, God's ready. And he can change you. You can't change yourself, but he can change you.
And I think it's very important that you just continuously give him all the glory.
All the glory. Yep.
Always. It's nothing that I did. I'm doing the footwork, but it's all glory of him. All of it.
I can see Jesus in you, Robby Decker. Yep. Are we done talking? Should I pray us out, or do you want to say something else?
I just want to tell anybody that's out there struggling, just anybody with anything, as you said, grief, addiction, depression, anxiety, anything. I mean, just don't give up. I mean, just keep going and keep pushing until the miracle happens. Because, I mean, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. But just don't give up.
Yeah. And be willing to accept Christ, because he's the helper.
Oh, yeah,
right?
definitely.
Other people can help us too, but he's the game changer there.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you have any verses that really you hung on to, or really are
my very first one, and I got it tattooed on my leg.
That's a favorite one then.
Was Philippians 4:13. I can do all things with Christ.
Yeah, Philippians 4:13. Yeah.
And I've held on to that, and I've held on to it, even if it's just a minor little argument where somebody's like, I can do it, I can do it all, whatever, I can do everything with him. So that's kind of basically sums up my story. So
that is a beautiful story.
I've been through a lot, but God kept me safe for some reason.
He protected you. He preserved you when you could have lost your life. Were you ever suicidal?
Nope, never. Okay. Well, never like attempted it or nothing. I thought about it, but never attempted it or nothing.
And I think sometimes with addiction, that's kind of our way to suicide, in the sense that I'm going to ruin my body and my life and all that.
Just like Christmas Eve when I gave my life to Christ, it was like, I knew that night it was either I was going to give it to him or I was going to die. I wasn't going to kill myself. Well, I was with addiction and alcohol and everything else, but thankfully today I gave my life to him, and here I am. You are making such a difference for the kingdom. It's so fun to watch. I'm enjoying every step of it. So much joy on the other side, isn't there? Yep, there really is. Well, I'm going to close out in prayer. All right. Okay? Yep. Our sweet, sweet Jesus, look what you have done. You have made Robby's life so much more than he ever thought it could be, even in the midst of his anger towards you and his addiction and his putting walls up so nobody could get in. You were able to penetrate those walls, and look what you have made. Father, I give you all the praise and all the glory at this incredible man who is willing to share his story in the hopes that somebody will see how beautiful you are, Jesus. We give you all the glory, and we pray in your sweet and precious and beautiful name. Amen.